Session. Welcome to Monday Morning Dharma on December 15th. Let's go ahead and settle in for some meditation. I find these short days to be really conducive to meditation. It's like an invitation to go inward. So why don't we do that? Just really, really gently turn ourselves over to our practice, to this morning's practice. Nowhere to be, nothing to do, just present here in the now. The mountain is always in the now, always present. Balanced, grounded, stable, with ancient wisdom awareness. Please gently bring your awareness to the exhalation of your breath and allow your exhalation to be just a bit longer and a bit more pronounced than your inhalation. Please feel free to experiment with pausing briefly at the bottom of each exhalation. We can now gently transition into meditation on the inner body. Please be the silent observer of sensations that may start in your hands and your feet in the form of a tingling, perhaps a lightness, perhaps a heaviness, perhaps a pulsation. No analysis is necessary. There's nothing to figure out. Just be the silent observer of these sensations and allow a more awakened state of awareness to emerge. A perfectly valid method of practicing this meditation is for you to observe sensations in so-called isolated parts of your body, your hands and your feet, the region of your chest, perhaps your face and your cheeks. An even more valid method of practicing this meditation is for you to observe one universal sensation extending from the crown of your head to the tips of your fingers, to the soles of your feet, and all space in between. Whichever method of practice you choose, please continue to silently observe. For a beginner, it is like a fast current running through a narrow bed or a narrow defile. In the middle or after that, it becomes like the gentle current of the river Ganges. In the end, it is like the flowing of all rivers into the mother ocean, or it is like the meeting of the mother and child of all rivers. Now, please redirect your awareness. Become aware again of your physical body and allow your breathing to become less shallow. Taking deeper and deeper breaths, become aware again of the garments of clothing resting on the surface of your body. Become aware again of your surroundings inside the room you're occupying. Deeper and deeper breaths, becoming aware again of the world that exists outside of the room that you're occupying. And we dedicate all of the merit from this morning's meditation to world peace. May all beings, without exception, be completely free from all forms of emotional and physical suffering. May all beings, without exception, be happy, peaceful, contented, enjoying inner and outer freedom. Completely fill up your belly and lungs with air, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and bring your meditation to an end. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back. So, those of you who have been attending these Monday, Friday classes for a while know how fond I am of the 11th century text called the Ganges Mahamudra. Mahamudra, meaning translated, means great seal, as in seal, like SEAL, seal of reliability or seal of authenticity. It was a teaching imparted um, by the Indian yogi Tilopa to his student Naropa on the banks of the river Ganges, hence the title, the Ganges Mahamudra. And I talk about the Ganges Mahamudra all the time. And as I've said in the past, there are many different components to the Ganges Mahamudra, many different areas of focus. If you told me to sort of say, like, a fool's errand to say the most important feature, but here I go. If you maybe perhaps the most important is the fact that we cannot think our way into being happy. We can't think our way out of suffering. It's kind of the main essence. We liberate ourselves from suffering and experience inner and outer peace through insight. And insight comes through experience. That's one of the fundamental messages of the Ganges Mahamudra. And I I have a tendency to talk more about that non-conceptual awareness, not conceptual thought, but experience through non-conceptual awareness. I sometimes talk about that and unintentionally, I think, may suggests that I'm disparaging the importance of education, the importance of acquiring knowledge, you know, emphasizing the importance of non-conceptual awareness is not to say that there's no place for knowing stuff, learning stuff, especially within the world of Dharma, right? And I'm talking about this in particular because on January 5th, we're going to start kind of a more formalized, if you will, study of Buddhist Dharma, Buddha Dharma. So, yeah, um, the Ganges Mahamudra, as I say, we can't think our way into happiness. We can't think our way out of suffering. Almost could even say another way of looking at it is we can't educate our way into being happy or educate our way out of suffering. Yeah. Some of us may have some experience with this. I would imagine that the most people participating in this class have, finished high school, maybe got the high school diploma, maybe went to college, maybe got a college degree. You know, I think it's probably safe to say, but stake everything that's dear to me on the fact that that education hasn't really solved our problems of life, you know? I mean, I could, if I were so inclined, I could go and say, I'm going to apply myself to learning everything there is to know about economics, you know, and dedicate my whole life to that and feel pretty confident that that wouldn't make much of an impact on my peace of mind. Just my being able to walk through this world in a state of ease. We might say, well, economics, that's sort of like, like maybe the most worldly of the worldly areas of study. I'm allowed to say that. I have a bachelor's degree in economics. So, um, but we might say, well, what about psychology? Psychology, that's, kind of getting more into like the internal realm, right? I don't think so, not even with psychology. Eckhart Tolle says, and for those of you who have studied psychology, you know, please don't take this personally. Eckhart Tolle says, the study of insanity will not make you sane. You know, tough love is only Eckhart Tolle can impart it. And that's not to say again, with regard to um, spiritual study in general and Buddhist study in particular, that's not to say that there is not a place for accumulating knowledge, to, understanding stuff through a conceptual framework. I mean, if you were sick and you went to a healer and this healer sort of like performed an evaluation and said at the end of it all, said, okay, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to do these different things, one of which is to take this and hands you a bottle, right? Hands you a bottle of something, and you say, what's in this? What's in this bottle? She says, take this 3 times a day for a month, and hands you a bottle, and you say, well, what's in the bottle? She says, capsules. And you say, well, what's in the capsule? Echinacea. Okay, well, what does echinacea do? Like getting information, like information at some level is important. It's, well, it can help strengthen your immune system. Okay, all right, I understand that. And maybe slash hopefully that's enough for us to go forward with this healing protocol, right? But we might say, we might go further and say, well, exactly how does echinacea help strengthen my immune system? What's the physiological, what's the biophysiological, like, sequence of events that causes this to work? And have there been double-blind, peer-reviewed clinical trials that demonstrate that echinacea help? And and those questions are answerable at some level. I don't think they're going to contribute to our healing, you know, in that hypothetical scenario. And where the line is different for all of us, it's different for all of us. If we have enough confidence in the healer, maybe even faith in the healer, this is take this 3 times a day. Okay. As or we might need what's in it, how often, what does it do? Where the line is for each of us is different. And I guess the point trying to make here is please be conscious of where your line is with regard to Dharma knowledge. There is an ocean of knowledge out there. All of it very valid. All of it has the potential to be very meaningful and beneficial. And at some point, we'll get to a point where we have enough knowledge, where we know enough to make progress on the path, have accumulated enough knowledge. And just kind of be aware of that. The meditation that we do on oops, yes, Tina.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about faith.
I want to ask
Is
about
faith
faith.
faith is faith conceptual or experiential?
Great. Same thing. Faith. 2 minutes. Do I want to take a shot at this now? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. There is a definition of faith. I love the Buddhist definition of faith because faith, I mean, and I was presented with this very early on that there's no room in Buddhism for blind faith. You know, adopt this view because it said we should do so, and just trust that it's the right thing to do. No, no, that wouldn't have worked for me. The definition of faith in Buddhism is a naturally virtuous mind. This is really deep and really one of the most difficult to understand and maybe difficult to understand and actualize of all the teachings, I think. A naturally virtuous mind that functions mainly to oppose the perception of faults in the observed object. Like, could they possibly have come up with a definition more sterile sounding than this beautiful, heartfelt thing called faith? A naturally virtuous mind that functions mainly, so it's a state of mind that functions mainly to oppose or prevent the perception of faults in the observed object. Okay. This and objects of faith, teachers, teachings, practices, anything that we regard as being holy and pure. Okay. So what faith says is that, well, before I say that, let me say, remember, one of the fundamental tenets of Buddhist thought is that we create the world and everything in it with our mind. right? And that itself, those are also very deep waters, could spend tons and tons of time talking about it. But just take my word, trust me. Don't trust me. Check on your own. But fundamental tenet of Buddhist view is we create the world and everything in it with our mind. So, to the extent that we perceive faults in the observed object, where are those faults coming from? From our mind. If we create the world and everything in it with our mind, then the perception of faults is also necessarily coming from our mind. You know, faith is a wisdom recognition of where those faults are coming from and applies the opponent. It opposes the perception of faults in the observed object. Really deep, really, really profound, and something for a lot of us Westerners that comes up. Okay, guru stuff, guru, teacher, objects of faith. What about these scoundrels who, do all, sexual improprieties, some of these other things? What about that? It's a valid question, valid objection. Of course, my appeal would be to maybe start with less sort of triggering examples like Dharma teachings, like Dharma teachings out of texts that we read. Oh, this thing impermanence, on impermanence. I'm not sure it doesn't seem to hold water in certain situations. It doesn't seem to be, or loving kindness. How about that? Loving kindness, wishing for others to be free of their suffering. Yeah, compassion, loving kindness, wishing for others to be happy. Yeah, but is that really true? Can that really solve all of my human problems? I have doubts. I have questions. I don't believe it. I don't think it's valid. Whatever the Dharma teaching might be, just take a look at those faults. Take a look at those faults, and over time, through the development of faith, we'll recognize where the true source of those faults are, where the true source of those faults are coming from. A naturally virtuous mind that functions mainly to oppose the perception of faults in the observed object. So last thing, running over a couple of minutes, but just the last point I wanted to make was with regard to um, the accumulation of knowledge versus experiential insight. All sorts of different objects of meditation that we can practice, that we can embrace and practice. We happen to do practice meditation on beyond the inner body, sensations within the body. Lately I've been talking from time to time about the celestial sound, the radiant ringing, the sound of the Om. Sometimes some more traditional object of meditation or more commonly recognized is the breath, meditation on the breath. They're all designed to suspend conceptual thought. They're all designed to suspend the thinking mind and give rise to awareness, non-conceptual awareness. And at some level, all of the academic knowledge in the world will not help us understand that better. It won't help us to deepen our experience of it. Some knowledge, some academic understanding of it is important, but it can only take us so far. At some point, we just need to do the practice and experience it without expectation, without speculation. Just do it and see what happens. So, yeah, that's the main message. That's the main message I wanted to convey is this balance between the Mahamudra, can't educate our way into being happy, and having enough education and understanding, conceptual understanding to where we have buy-in from the thinking mind. That's really what it is. At some point, the thinking mind, we need to shut it up because it'll sit back there forever and say, yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about this? You know, valid questions up to a point. At some point, we need to leave that behind and just go with the practice. Just do the practice for the sake of doing the practice. I ran over by 6 minutes, you guys. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. Have a
Thank you.
good week. You're most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, you guys. You're welcome. Thanks for the question, Tina.